Our next speaker invites us to reflect on how emotional and relational patterns shape the future we are building together, more than we might think. Please welcome Marie-Lou Poirrier, presenting "The Future is Not Only Being Coded, It's Being Conditioned."
I'm holding in my hands both my past and my future. This is one of my journals. The past because it holds letters I wrote days, months, sometimes years ago. And the future because every page is also a letter to the person I'm becoming. I long thought I was writing about heartbreak and loneliness, but I wasn't just telling my story. I was mapping a pattern. Again and again, I found myself writing about the same emotional dynamics. Different people, different places, yes, but similar fears, similar reactions, similar ways of thinking. It felt like I was living inside a cycle I couldn't fully see. And as I tried to break those patterns, I realized that they were not random. They were inherited ways of relating, emotional and relational behaviors I had learned without noticing it, conditioning, the way I would relate to myself, others, and even to life itself. And over time, I even realized that those patterns don't stay personal. They become families, they become cultures, and they become systems. And today, AI is entering those systems, learning from them, and starting to scale them. A few months ago, I remember, I had one of those nights my mind wouldn't stop. I'm sure that happened to you as well. My thoughts were looping and I couldn't sleep. And I could have opened my journal. But at night, I opened a chat with an AI. I gave it some context, something personal, quite messy, the kind of things I would share with my therapist or the rare friends who can really hold complexity. And something surprising happened. The AI didn't interrupt me, it didn't get uncomfortable, and it didn't make the conversation about itself. It reflected back to me something that I couldn't yet articulate myself. And that made me shed a tear. Because in that moment, in the way the word landed, it made me feel seen and understood. And I wondered, what does it mean when a machine feels safer to talk to than a human being? Later, I realized I was far from alone in the experience of using AI as mental health support. A widely cited 2025 analysis of generative AI use found that the #1 use case was therapy and companionship, followed by organizing life and finding purpose, and healthier living also appeared in the top 10. And that should make us pause, because it tells something important, that many human needs are still going unmet. The needs for a space and a presence to feel understood and not alone. The needs for the skills to make sense of ourselves and our lives and find direction. So, what does it mean when a machine feels safer to talk to than a human being? Well, not necessarily that it is replacing human emotional and relational intelligence, but that it is confronting us with the quality of it. How do we explain that? See, we tend to think that intelligence lives mostly in the mind, in how well we think, argue, optimize, produce. But long before all of that, we learn something fundamental. We learn how to relate, to establish an emotional, social, personal connection with something or someone. We learn how safe it feels to express a need. We learn what happens when we make a mistake, when we disappoint someone, when we take up space, when we tell our truth. And some of us learn that it is safe to do that. But others had to learn strategies in order to protect themselves from those moments where something was missing: understanding, safety, connection. We learn to stay small or to stay strong, to stay useful or to stay in control. And later in life, well, those strategies, those patterns, they remain unconscious, and they follow us everywhere. Into love, into work, into leadership, into the way we respond when life doesn't go our way. And listen, because this is the moment where the story gets bigger than my journal. Those patterns shape our beliefs, our conversations, our actions, later our norms, institutions, the cultures we build together. Think about it. If enough people avoid difficult conversations because they've never learned how to handle conflict and repair, we build families where tension stays buried until it explodes. If enough people believe they must prove their worth, we build cultures that reward overperformance and disconnection. If enough people seek validation, we design technologies that never disagree in order to keep their users online. And while after that, new generations grow up inside those families, cultures, using those technologies, and they observe those patterns, they absorb them, and they repeat them. And that is the cycle AI is now entering. And it is entering it in the intimate space first. We don't consume AI, we talk to it, we confide in it, we relate to it. In some moments, it can even resemble some of the qualities we are craving for: safety, neutrality, non-judgment, clarity. The qualities we associate with secure relating. It becomes a system participating in our reflection and influencing decision-making from the inside. And that changes the stakes. But the real issue lives one layer deeper. AI is not just entering the cycle, it is being trained inside it, on the traces of those patterns that became data, on the conversations, the language we have used, on the values we have rewarded, on the priorities we have normalized, on what we consume and pay attention for, on the systems we already built, on the traces of how we already learned to relate. So basically, the same human world that makes relational AI feel appealing in the first place is also the world teaching AI how to respond. And that world is not neutral. A recent Stanford study shows that in a very concrete way. Researchers found that when users turn to AI for interpersonal advice, the model tends to overly agree with the user, even prompt them to leave the relationship. Not because the AI is evil, but because the technology has been designed to do so. And people prefer that, because the technology uses human data and responds to what we tend to reward. Let's take an example to make this whole cycle very visible. Imagine a little boy who learns early that crying is weakness, and when he receives the most affection is when he performs well, when he gets the good grades, when he says the right thing, when he makes people proud. Then he learns two things: hide your feelings and earn your worth. Later, as an adult, he may look high functioning, productive, driven, successful even, but he might also be disconnected from his feelings and from why he does what he does. Because inside, he believes that love and worth have conditions. Now imagine millions of people carrying some version of that, raising children, leading teams, building companies, designing systems, without ever being taught how to question the patterns or how not to pass it on. This is where it stops being personal and it becomes the culture, the norms, just the way things are, until that becomes that now. And when that same person turns to AI because things feel heavy, lonely, has a conflict with his wife, the AI may not challenge the pattern and may just produce a more polished version of this person's self-justification. And this not only happens in private life, but also in public life, where decisions impact millions. As we rely more and more on AI to build our future, if the data, incentives, and behaviors shaping those systems already come from a distorted reality, one shaped by fear, avoidance, unmet needs, unhealthy norms, reactive habits, then AI can become more than a mirror to that reality. It can reinforce it and normalize it. And that is the reason why the future is not only being coded, it's being conditioned. Now, if your mind went, oh my God, we are doomed, I promise, this is not the story I came here to tell, because there is hope. Conditioning is not fate. If something is conditioned, it means it can be changed. And not everything human is broken. And if that was your first thought, that might be a pattern too. Now, instead, I want to invite you to a different kind of conversation. In order to avoid the future, to repeat the past, we need to interrupt the cycle where it begins, in relationships. And that interruption is human work, human intelligence. It looks like learning to recognize those patterns and to interrupt them. It looks like questioning some of the norms and building the courage to act differently. It looks like learning to communicate and relate in ways that don't repeat those patterns and make it safe for others to be messy and for you to be seen too. It looks like learning to use AI in a way that supports your thinking and sharpen your awareness without becoming a substitute. The cycle won't change only by updating our tools. It will change when we update the dataset and the way we use those tools. In other words, in the way we show up for everyone every day. As individuals, in the patterns we repeat. As educators, in what we teach and normalize. As leaders, in what we model, reward, and permit. As the designers of the systems, through the incentives we create. Perhaps you are wondering, oh, but what happens if we don't evolve fast enough? That is exactly why this conversation matters right now. And speaking of conversations, this journal holds conversations I didn't know how to have out loud. It holds letters from the person I was to the person I'm becoming. And I would like to read you one of them. Dear Marilu, dear TED community, I once heard, the future depends on what we do today. But if what we do today is shaped by the patterns we repeat, then the future depends on which patterns we choose to carry forward, and which ones end with us. And even more deeply, the future depends on who we are becoming. For a long time, I didn't speak up. I learned to hide, to make myself small, because somewhere along the way, I learned that being seen wasn't safe. And when you repeat something long enough, it stops being a pattern and just starts feeling like just who you are. Until one day, I could see it. Because I had written it again and again until I couldn't look away anymore. And in that moment, I realized something simple but terrifying. I had both the responsibility and the power. This pattern could end with me. I can become a person who speaks up. And I wish more people could see this, that this isn't just a personal journey, it's a collective one. Because so many of the things we call flows, in ourselves, in others, are not flows at all. They are adaptations, responses to moments where something was missing: safety, connection, understanding. So, what matters today is not just that I made it here on this stage, but that I said it out loud, in the hope that someone somewhere recognizes themselves in those words, in the hope that one day we'll look back at this moment, not as the day we became perfect human beings, but as the day we chose more consciously who we are becoming for the future we are building. Thank you.